There are very few lobbies working the corridors of Capitol Hill with as much clout as AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. They're the people who tell the Congress which legislation affecting Israel they like and which they don't. They are not agents of the Israeli government, but out of personal conviction as American Jews, they lobby the Congress and the administration for measures that support the state of Israel. But the charge is that apart from lobbying, AIPAC also gets involved in election campaigns by setting the tone, the line, for about 80 pro-Israel political action committees around the country, pro-Israel PACs, that have given $6 million this year to a variety of candidates. One race they're focusing on is the senatorial contest in Rhode Island, where they say Republican Senator John Chafee has a poor record on Israel, and they want him out. In Rhode Island, we tried to talk to Senator Chafee as he arrived at a state park celebration near Providence.
How are you, sir?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Good.
Senator Chafee had told us earlier that he would not agree to a formal interview about the subject of our report, but we had made clear to him and his press people that, like any reporter covering any candidate, we felt free to ask questions at any of his public appearances.
Why does AIPAC, why do the pro-Israel lobby find you so unfriendly?
No, I'm not going to get into that, Mike, and you and I had the ground rules here.
Okay, if the governor and the senators are following me.
Rhode Island has a population of only 1 million, so a senatorial campaign here should be cheap. This year, it's not.
Richard Leach running for the U.S. Senate. Help me out in November.
Richard Leach, who is challenging Chafee, is the state's lieutenant governor. He has also been an active member of the U.S. Jewish community. The money from pro-Israel PACs that Leach has received comes totally from out of state. Altogether, almost $200,000 of the $2.5 million he'll be spending has been given by 45 pro-Israel political action committees.
Good afternoon, Leach for Senate. Hold on.
But add to that hundreds of thousands of dollars more from individuals all over the country, many of whom are tied to those same pro-Israel PACs. Earlier this year, Senator Chafee had written to constituents attacking so-called outside forces, who he said are pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into the campaign, hoping to buy a seat in the United States Senate. Why, asked the senator. Chafee, as we said, had refused us an interview. Richard Leach did not.
Richard Leach is hardly a household name in California or Arizona or Illinois or Florida, and you've never voted in the Senate of the United States. So the question is, how come these pro-Israel PACs know that you're so reliable?
They know that Richard Leach can win this race for the Senate. Any candidate for the United States Senate raises a tremendous amount of their money from outside of their home state. You can look at any candidate. My opponent, John Chafee, has raised almost twice as much political action committee money as I have. He and I have both raised more money.
Not a penny from pro-Israel. Why? Is he against Israel?
I don't believe he is, but you'd have to ask him what his position on that
Well, I
is.
shall.
But that, as we had found out, was the only subject John Chafee did not want to discuss in public. In fact, on many key issues, like aid for Israel, John Chafee, as he reminded some of his Jewish constituents in this Rhode Island synagogue, John Chafee has been a strong supporter of Israel.
Senator from Rhode Island.
His problem, though, is that he has not voted 100% to demonstrate the political loyalty demanded by AIPAC and most pro-Israel PACs. Example, Chafee voted against legislation that would have had the U.S. government close down this PLO mission to the UN in New York, a measure the U.S. courts later found to be unconstitutional. But what irritated the pro-Israel PACs most were Chafee's vote over the years to sell sophisticated military equipment like surveillance aircraft to moderate Arab regimes like the Saudis, even though Chafee was on the record saying,
Israel's military dominance in the area is not going to be altered by this sale. If it were to be altered, I would not support the sale.
Several prominent Jewish Rhode Islanders, like Republican Larry Goldberg, have tried to convince the pro-Israel PACs that Senator Chafee deserves their backing.
And I think that the exaggerated fundraising, has really not been fair to his record.
What do you mean exaggerated fundraising?
Well, we have raised hardly any money from the pro-Israel community.
The Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation and the headlines it has produced
All of that has hurt moderates like John Chafee, says Goldberg. Why? Because it raises the anxiety level among pro-Israel Jews in this country and makes them anxious to find congressmen they can count on 100%.
And they may look more carefully at Senate races, even far away from where they live, in order to see if there's a candidate that they can support who will be more pro-Israel than the one that they have there now. And I think that's the way that it plays out.
Inside this building are the headquarters of AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. They would not let us photograph inside their headquarters. AIPAC says it is the spearhead for support for Israel here in Washington. It is not a political action committee. It does not make campaign contributions. But the clout of AIPAC here on Capitol Hill is legendary.
Practically every congressman and senator says his prayers to the AIPAC lobby. No, they've done an enormous job of corrupting the American democratic process.
George Ball was #2 in the State Department under Presidents Kennedy and Johnson, and he has never been reluctant to criticize the pro-Israel lobby.
It's the most effective lobby in the United States today, and I would put that ahead of the National Rifle Association.
What's wrong with picking a candidate to support on the basis of the way that he is voted? Isn't that the American way?
I think it's a caricature of the American way.
The word power, when it's used for AIPAC, is a myth. It's baloney. AIPAC is powerful only because the American people are behind Israel.
Rabbi Israel Miller is a vice president of AIPAC.
AIPAC is not anti-Chafee.
No, AIPAC has put on the public record his votes on some of the issues that concern us, but we deal with a very politically aware and sophisticated group of people, the pro-Israel community, and they make up their own minds. You know, if we were
You
to
don't
tell
direct them?
We do not direct them.
Let me read to you a memo, an AIPAC memo, November 3rd, 1987. Senate race. Lieutenant Governor Richard Leach, Democrat, Rhode Island, is running against incumbent Senator John Chafee, Republican. Leach, who is Jewish, has a very good chance. Our problem is that the pro-Israel community is not excited and as forthcoming as they should be. We need to put the word out on this race, emphasizing Chafee's poor record. The focus should be to generate interest for a terrific candidate to replace a poor supporter of our issue. See attached voting record and Marty's analysis. It's an AIPAC memo.
Who signed it? I don't recognize it as an AIPAC memo.
Rabbi Miller continued.
In this case, I think all that was being said was that Leach has a chance against an incumbent senator.
Who has a poor record. And we got to get the word out.
His record is not as poor as some other senators.
Shortly after that interview, AIPAC confirmed that the memo was in fact written by a former AIPAC political staffer. But they insisted she was a low-level employee and that her memo did not reflect AIPAC policy. And that's important for AIPAC because under U.S. federal election regulations, if it were shown that pro-Israel PACs were working in conjunction with AIPAC or were coordinated by AIPAC, that would arguably be a violation of the law. Well, shortly before this broadcast, 60 Minutes received in the mail from an anonymous sender another memo written by a high-level AIPAC official, Liz Schreier, in which she urged a colleague to make certain that several pro-Israel PACs around the country funnel cash contributions to a handful of senatorial candidates. AIPAC officials acknowledged to us the memo was indeed an AIPAC document, but they declined to answer any questions about it. They said in a statement that despite appearances to the contrary, AIPAC does not have the power to direct fundraising decisions. Now, who are other senatorial candidates in current races with what pro-Israel PACs call poor records on Israel?
Well, for instance, this year, many pro-Israel PACs are trying to defeat incumbent Senator Chick Hecht of Nevada, even though he is Jewish, because he, too, did not follow the AIPAC line on weapon sales to the Arabs. And there are many who charge that AIPAC, with its sights set only on Israel, is just too demanding of U.S. politicians.
We aren't demanding of U.S. politicians. We have a concern about Israel, which is understandable, particularly in this generation. Had you and I been in certain parts of Europe, we would have walked to Auschwitz together. We're very sensitive about the security, about the future of Israel, and support of Israel means that we feel that it is in the interest not merely of Israel, but also in the interest of the United States. Israel is a strategic ally of the United States.
In recent years, AIPAC and the pro-Israel PACs have helped defeat, among others, Congressman Paul Findlay and Pete McCloskey, Senators Harrison Schmitt of New Mexico, Walter Huddleston of Kentucky, and Chuck Percy of Illinois. Like Senator Chafee, Percy too came out in favor of that sale of AWACS to the Saudis.
I finally reached the stage where, as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, I saw our foreign policy totally turned around. With a Muslim world, 800 million people looking askance at the United States of America, what is happening, who is running the foreign policy. Can Israel and the Prime Minister have more power than the entire Senate of the United States or the President of the United States? And that, to me, I simply said, enough is enough.
That particular AWACS sale to Saudi Arabia did manage to pass the Congress, and in 1984, pro-Israel PACs and other individuals spent millions to unseat the powerful Senator Percy.
Let me just quote to you the words of the executive director of AIPAC, Tom Dye. After the defeat of Chuck Percy a few years back, he said to a Jewish group in Toronto, quote, "All the Jews in America from coast to coast gathered to oust Percy, and the American politicians, those who hold public positions now, and those who aspire, got the message."
It was an unfelicitous expression of that which Tom felt in his enthusiasm and in his zeal. I think if he had it to say all over again, he would have put it altogether differently.
Rabbi Miller, about a year ago, the New York Times wrote, AIPAC has become a major force in shaping U.S. policy in the Middle East. Organization has gained the power to influence a presidential candidate's choice of staff, to block practically any arms sale to an Arab country, and to serve as a catalyst for intimate military relations between the Pentagon and the Israel army. How did AIPAC become so powerful?
Again, I'll say that that's very flattering, but it's a myth. It's just not so. The American people support Israel, and therefore Congress votes as it does.
One of Israel's staunchest supporters is Senator Daniel Inouye of Hawaii, who says that AIPAC has nothing to do with his feelings about Israel.
If I can help Israel help herself in every instance, I'd do so. I'm also convinced it's in our national interest. I've yet to see any country in that part of the world that is as reliable as far as our strategic requirements are concerned as Israel is.
I don't believe it's an ally at all. We have no alliance with it. I mean, they insist on total freedom of action, and they insist on our subsidizing their total freedom of action.
The amount of that subsidy is remarkable and a testament to AIPAC's clout on Capitol Hill. Altogether, Israel gets more than $3 billion a year in assistance from the United States.
Sometimes the votes go through without a single debate involving billions of dollars. You couldn't spend that kind of money in this country without a huge debate going on. But a foreign government gets this money without debate because simply it's just organized to get it.
Why does Israel get more aid, more U.S. aid, than any other country in the world? $700 per Israeli per year, as opposed to $50 per Egyptian per year, as opposed to $2 per African per year.
None of this money goes for the $700 goes to raise the living standard of Israeli people. This is for their defense. This is for the security of Israel. If Israel were destabilized, the Arabs, with all of their petrodollars and with all of their weapons, would just sweep Israel into the sea.
Is there a possibility of a backlash if Israel is perceived as too powerful in the halls of government here in Washington?
There's always this possibility if people begin to believe that little Israel is calling the shots, then I'm certain Americans would resent that. They won't want any country, big or small, to be calling the shots in the Congress of the United States. But I don't think that AIPAC is calling the shots as far as I'm concerned.
Is it common sense or cowardice on the part of senators who just don't want to talk about this?
Oh, I would say the senators would say it's just being practical.
This past week, 3 major Jewish organizations took issue with AIPAC. The leaders of the American Jewish Committee, the American Jewish Congress, and the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith asserted in a letter to the president of AIPAC that AIPAC does not speak for the consensus of the organized Jewish community. And in a CBS News poll of 1,530 American adults 2 weeks ago, we asked, do you think that in order to preserve the security of Israel, the U.S. should give Israel more aid than it gives any other country? 13% said yes, 72% said no, 15% said they don't know.